Our attention to the province of KwaZulu-Natal, which has seen a spate of political killings in recent years. President Cyril Ramaphosa even visited the province just a few weeks ago, demanding answers for the ongoing violence. Now, the Moerane Commission was established in 2016 by the provincial premier, Willis Mkhunu, to investigate the ongoing political killings. Now, someone who's been covering this issue extensively in KZN is eNCA's reporter, Dasen Thathiah. He's joining us now live from our Durban studio this morning, right from eThekwini. Dasen, very good morning. Now, just a few weeks ago, the Moerane Commission had asked for an extension before it issues its final report. It asked for an extension to finalize that report. Are we any closer to getting that report, Dasen?
That's right, Dan. In fact, I think this week is the moment of truth, because after the year of hearings that we've seen, now we understand that that report will finally land on Premier Willis Mkhunu's desk this week, at the end of the month, in fact. And that extension that you speak about was actually the second one, because the Commission had found that there were so many elements that they had to investigate. And I believe over 60 witnesses actually gave testimony at the Commission. But now the interesting thing, Dan, is that once that report lands with the Premier, it's up to him, it's under his discretion as to whether those recommendations will be implemented, because at this point all the Commission can really do is make recommendations based on what they've found. There's also been a bit of debate really talking about why are these killings still persisting while the Moerane Commission was doing its work in the province. But I think the misunderstanding there is that the Commission was established to find the underlying causes. It wasn't necessarily there to stop the killings outright. I mean, that still is in the hands of police and law enforcement agencies. But during the course of that commission, Dan, I think one of the most interesting testimonies that many people were waiting for was that of the ANC. And that only came very late last year. That came after other parties and analysts, as well as academics, pointed fingers at the governing party, saying that they believed that part of the reason why these killings were persisting in KZN was because ANC members were fighting among themselves. But the former KZN chairperson, the ANC KZN chairperson, and now the current provincial interim committee coordinator, Sihle Zikalala, gave his view on why these killings took place in KZN.
The institutionalized and deep ingrained culture of violence in our society is at the core of these killings. These killings are clearly taking a shape that illustrate a complex mix of political decay, social and moral degradation, criminality, and deadly competition for economic or financial resources and control.
Sihle Zikalala there, Dasen, painting a very complex picture of what could lie behind the ongoing political killings. Recently we saw that interministerial task team being sent by President Cyril Ramaphosa to KZN, as he said that the matter of the political killings is urgent priority as they are going on. And one of those ministers, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, made a statement to say one of the biggest challenges in resolving or investigating these political killings in KwaZulu-Natal is an issue of intimidation. Sometimes witnesses come up and they say, yes, I saw something, then they withdraw, then they say they were intimidated. During the Moerane Commission, in terms of the hearings, did any of that surface, that the levels of intimidation are a challenge in KZN in trying to get to the bottom of the killings?
That's right. In fact, even the SAPS during their testimony at the Moerane Commission spoke about that. And that is related to the other issue, the issue of getting witness statements. So you'd find that an investigation starts and then witnesses don't give statements, or they aren't able to be reached. And all of these things then compromise these investigations. I was at that briefing that you were referring to, where the Interministerial Committee was meeting, and that was, I believe, last week. And at that time, Becky Cele, the National Police Commissioner, also mentioned that the issue there is that the teams that have been handling these political killings on the ground have almost been working in silos. And this is also something that came up during the commission. You have the NPA on the one side and you have police on the other side, and both indirectly pointing fingers at each other. The police saying that, you know, they do everything that they can on the ground and then hand the cases over, but unfortunately they go to court and then the cases aren't seen through and there aren't any convictions. The NPA then saying on the other hand as well that, you know, they don't have enough to work with. But it seems now, under the president's instruction, one can hope that all of these teams, all of these different agencies will be pulled together in the hope of working together to find out exactly why these killings are happening and how they can stop them. They'll also then be taking into account what comes out of that Moerane Commission report and use that to aid their investigations.
Now, Dasen, you said earlier, well, it depends on the Premier, Willis Mchunu, who set up this commission, which recommendations to implement or not. I'm sure some of them, or all of them, will be shared with the President of the Republic, Cyril Ramaphosa, who has called for urgent priority. Do you get a sense from what you are picking up that Willis Mchunu is very much aware of the urgency of ensuring that whatever comes out later this week, hopefully, from the Moerane Commission in terms of recommendations is taken seriously and implemented urgently?
I think he's definitely well aware, and I'll tell you why. You'll find that, during public engagements recently, the Premier has mentioned that aspect. And I think the sense of urgency also comes because we've now seen a resurgence of these killings. Remember, the most that we saw was leading up to the 2016 elections. And then there were a few last year as well. But now the spotlight is once again on KZN because we're seeing more of these killings taking place. And the Premier also in that briefing with the Interministerial Committee once again reiterated that he will then act on that report the minute he gets it. There was also a few questions raised previously over whether this report will be in the public domain, but we understand that it will be, but naturally it needs to first go to the President as well as those that are investigating these murders.